Hello, everyone, and welcome. We all know that hiring is just the beginning. Actually, let me begin my recording. Excuse me for the technical difficulties. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We all know that hiring is just the beginning, and what you do next determines your new hire's future performance. When a new hire starts, they very often get forgotten because of the expectation to be ready. And because we tend to get wrapped up in the formalities like the legal paperwork, the background checks, etc., and then by month 3, you and them are wondering if this may have been a mistake. And that's really not really a hiring problem. That's actually a workforce design problem. And there is a difference. And today we're going to talk about why filling a seat is easy, but building commitment is intentional, and how better onboarding turns new hires into long-term contributors instead of a short-term assets. Pardon me. All right. So you're probably wondering, who are we to be giving you this information? Well, I'm Joel Schwan, founder of Schwan Stratifier, and I help small and mid-sized businesses align their workforce needs with their strategy so they don't bleed money through the bad hiring or undefined roles and or terrible onboarding. And in simple terms, I evaluate what's actually happening inside your processes and give you a plan that saves money and makes an execution more practical. And joining me is Amy Swotinsky, our leadership coach and advisor. Amy works with leaders and teams to turn alignment into action, eliminating the Monday morning head nod where everyone agrees in the room and then disappears back into their silos. Oops. So first, let's talk about the onboarding problem. And there's a hard truth most companies avoid, but first I want you to tell me, if you had to guess, what do you think your onboarding percentage is of employees that believe their company gets onboarded right? I'll give you about 5 seconds. All right, so let's find out what the answer was. 12%. Only 12% of employees believe their company gets onboarded right. And 1 in 3 new hires leave within 90 days, which gives an average cost per hire about $4,700. And this isn't even counting the executive roles. This is just the baseline of hiring. Just imagine how much your executives would cost if they decided to leave because of bad hiring practices or onboarding practices. That's a revolving door that gets pretty expensive pretty fast. So when onboarding is structured and becomes performative, it makes a big difference. 58% higher retention rate and 29% feel more prepared if there's a structure to your onboarding. It is a critical function and also serves as 70% early job fit decisions. So when I talk about structuring, that's aligning the onboarding processes to build business goals and ensures consistency and relevance in the employee role and clarity and skill development. So structured onboarding includes management involvement, setting clear development pathways, and addressing early skill building for rapid acceleration. Onboarding is a make or break business system. So how do we fix it? Igniting the engagement is probably the most important part. Onboarding shouldn't be a history lesson, and that's where a lot of documents and handbooks kind of come in like an old style thinking. We handed a handbook, and I don't know about anyone else, but majority of people that look at the handbook honestly don't look at it again until they want to know when their PTO is happening, when the next holiday is, or if they have something to argue with HR about. These are all really, the handbook has always been seen as like giving a history and the policies, and that's it. So when we talk about igniting engagement, I ask you to ask yourselves, what fuel are you using? Because for some organizations, the most powerful fuel isn't a feeling, but a certainty. They believe that the faster a new hire understands the rules of the road, the faster they can hit the top speed. And there are some different types of cultures that practice this, and they don't all have to be the same. For example, a very structured culture like Amazon, their engagement is ignited through an understanding and an appreciation of their process. They aren't hiring just, or they aren't just hiring. They are programming their new hires with their leadership principles, and they learn what their culture is like even before day one. And this structure creates an engagement because it removes the frictional heat of wondering how to succeed, and gives giving the path built for their new hires. But there are also companies that are more performative, kind of like Netflix and Uber. Engagement is ignited through competition and excellence, and performative cultures are built on a simple premise: results matter more than presence, intent, or tenure. And it explains how performance is evaluated and what great actually looks like, and how feedback is delivered, and what happens when performance no longer aligns. This helps you become more engaged because the bar is much higher. But whether you are structured or performative, your handbook must be the culture code that explains the rules of the game, and in an engaging manner. If you don't define the culture in onboarding, your new hires will waste their energy trying to guess the rules instead of playing the game. Because like I said, majority of people will not be reading the handbooks if it's just giving them a history lesson. Now, we've identified the fuel, but how do you actually deliver that fuel to a new hire's heart and mind? Well, you do it by killing the digital dust. You move away from the 50-page PDF that no one reads and toward a living, breathing guide. So let's look at the first page of our template. I have created a handbook template, which I will be sharing at the end of this webinar to everyone that's interested. That gives a pretty much good layout as to what type of performant handbook should look like. So beginning with the first page here, it doesn't start with the legal jargon, as you can notice. It starts with a challenge. Your impact should be felt. If you're not there, people should notice. This is from the very first sentence, and we are signaling that this isn't just a rule book. Because by using conversational language and interactive prompts like grab your favorite beverage, Netflix uses memes, by the way, you lower the new hires' defenses and invite them into the story of the company. And on slide 2 here, this handbook template addresses the being boring problem. It explicitly states that real values aren't what's on the lobby wall, but are defined by who gets rewarded and who is let go. And as an interactive DigiKit, this is where you embed a short video from department heads explaining a time that they saw a value in action. This is becoming more popular with some companies, where it's more interactive to have a short clip video for new hires to view and understand, like from a director's point of view that has worked there for long periods of time, or department head. Or you can even customize the handbooks for specific departments, which may be more time consuming, but may be worth it in the long run, so that person can understand the value of the team that they're jumping on. And this transforms a static document into a social proof tool. You can connect your new hire to quizzes, multimedia, and mobile-friendly formats to boost the engagement, because everything's online now and it's much easier to do so. And on page 3, we're going to talk about the high performance culture part. We look at the life beyond work, encouraging people to let your geek flag fly is a saying I love to say, in the sense that because in a truly interactive onboarding experience, this isn't just a text. This is an invitation for the new hire to upload their own photo, if possible, or list their own geeky hobby into the company directory. And the handbook should be able to direct them on how to do that. And you are moving away from telling them about the culture to asking them to contribute to it, even before day one, if they're getting the handbook ahead of time. And this handbook template is the skeleton, which I will share again after the webinar concludes. When you add the interactive layers, the quizzes on the keeper test, the video testimonials, and personal profile building, you aren't just onboarding, you are kind of orchestrating brilliance. We've talked about how to light the fire, but if you don't manage that heat, you're going to get burned. And Amy is going to walk us through how to build a high-performing team. So, Amy?
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Joel. And hi, everybody. So as Joel was just talking about the onboarding process and how important it is to make sure that your team is inspired and engaged and really connected to the culture. The question is, what next? How do you turn your team of high performers into a high-performing team? If you're like most companies, you're not very intentional about it. There's an open spot, you put the person there, maybe you put all your team members together, and it's like, what could go wrong? Well, if history serves us well, actually a lot. And one of my favorite examples is when the NBA All-Stars were playing against some Olympic hopefuls, a bunch of college kids. The NBA All-Stars had the best of the best, and they were playing against, a group of college kids. And the question is, who do you think won? Most people, if you were betting, you'd bet on the NBA All-Stars. After all, they're the best of the best. Well, what actually happened is the NBA All-Stars lost 4 out of the 5 games. And the only game that they won by a couple points. And the question is, how could that be? Well, there's actually a phenomenon called the too much talent problem. Believe it or not, you can actually have too much talent on a team. And that's exactly what happened with the NBA All-Stars. So when you have more than 50% top talent on your team, you actually tend to lose. And that's what happened. The NBA All-Stars, they were very focused on themselves and individual performance and shooting. And the Olympic hopefuls, these college kids, were all about passing the ball. And there's actually a fun fact that if you want to know if a team is going to be better together, it's not how often they shoot, but it's actually how much they pass the ball. So that's an example of what bad looks like and what could go wrong. So let's talk about what good looks like. Okay, go ahead one more, Joel. There we go. So this is my favorite example, the Orpheus Orchestra. So this is an orchestra that's made up of world-class musicians. They play all over the world, and they've won 4 Grammy Awards. And what makes them so unique is they actually don't have a conductor. They're the only orchestra in the world without a conductor. And so with no leader, what do? All of their members share in the leadership role. And as you can imagine, they're an amazing collaboration group. So what can we learn from these 2 examples? Well, we can learn that talent alone is not the only thing that you need. Go ahead, Joel. Talent is really, really important, but it's no longer sufficient. What you need is the collaboration. You need the teamwork. You need the people that are passing the ball. And the good news is that collaboration is a leadership skill. And like all leadership skills, you can measure it and you can get better at it. So not only can you measure it individually, but you can actually measure it as a team. And you can see whether your team is better individually or when they're all together. So I know you're not leading a team of basketball players, and you're probably not leading a team, of musicians, but you are leading a team, and you're going to want to make sure that they're collaborating and working well together. So the good news is there's actually a way that you can measure that. And I'll show you that as we talk about the assessment once we come back from Q&A. So let me open it up for Q&A. Any questions on the onboarding process or on the teaming? Joe, while we're waiting, let me ask you, I know when you said onboarding is a performance accelerator, what did you actually mean by that?
So most onboarding is designed to transfer information like forms, policies, systems, etc. A performance accelerator is different. It's about reducing uncertainty fast. And when people know what success looks like, how their role connects to the bigger picture, and where to focus their energy, they reach productivity a lot sooner and with a lot less frustration.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. What do you think the biggest mistake is that organizations make in the first 90 days?
I think the biggest is that they assume motivation fills in the gaps. Like new hires actually start highly motivated, but motivation doesn't replace the understanding or the clarity. If
Mhm.
expectations are fuzzy or unclear and feedback is delayed, especially if they have questions before they start, or priorities aren't clear, again, questions before they start, people start guessing, and guessing is where performance tends to break down.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see a comment here from Noelle. She likes the idea that collaboration is a skill that can be enhanced. Yeah, she hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah, that's what's so exciting about it. It's a skill that can be measured and improved, and you can do it both on the individual leader, but then you can see how do they all work together. Any
Any
other
more?
questions?
Well, while we wait, I got a question for you, Amy.
Okay.
Let's talk about outcomes. Amy,
Okay.
can you give us an example of what you typically find when you assess a leadership team?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to jump on the comment that Noelle made about, collaboration. So collaboration is really, really important. But very rarely does someone come to me and say, I have a collaboration problem. What they typically say is, I have an innovation problem, or my team's not creative enough. We're not growing. So there must be something wrong with like all of the good ideas. And what's really interesting is that when we actually give them the assessment, what we find is they're actually quite creative and quite innovative. The problem is a collaboration problem. They're actually, they're quite creative, but when they get together, nobody's really listening to each other and they're not acting like a team. So they're losing all of the great ideas. Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I see that Noelle has a question about how do you measure by team or individual? And that's what's so exciting. You can actually measure both. You can measure individually the leaders with an assessment, and I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. And you can actually give the assessment to the whole team and watch how they interact. And then you actually find out, does the team work better together or separately? That's what the key is, and that's what's so unique. So you can actually measure it with an assessment. Any other questions? All right. Why don't we jump in and talk about the assessments?
Sounds great.
Okay.
All right. So first up, we'll talk about the workforce management survey, which is a survey that I employ to my clients. And the way this works is that it isn't an HR audit. It is actually a decision audit. And I'm not judging your policies, but instead kind of diagnosing your current state workflows so we can move you from being reactive staffing to more intentional and strategy aligned in your workforce planning. And the audit I conduct is to help your business identify risk and a misalignment in your workforce processes by using a maturity-based assessment. The model evaluates 58 standards across 5 core elements and maps results to like 10 workforce dimensions to support data-driven workforce planning. That's a lot of technical wording for me, basically telling you that I'm going to be making sure that your processes are aligned from your workforce needs to your business strategies.
Okay.
And then also to give a little extra points to this is that the assessment actually is only about 14 questions long. It's really easy. It's preferred to either the business owner or the HR director or both if they have one. to answer these questions, because they will help them better understand the processes that they have and how to improve.
Sounds really powerful, Joel, and I love how that you said it's not that cumbersome, and you can get some really strong and exciting results from it. So that's really awesome. So I'd love to talk about the leadership and innovation skills assessment. And when you hear assessment, a lot of times assessments are really based on your personality or your preferences. Like, this is what you prefer, or this is your destiny. And what I love about this skills assessment is it's actually based on your real world skills, and it uses an activity-based skills test. So you're actually looking at real world scenarios and figuring out what your skill level is and where you're stronger or where you might have some gaps. And like I said, you can use it individually or then do that activity test amongst the whole team. And that's what's exciting. So it does measure 15 human skills, and these are the skills that AI can't replicate. So it's creativity, it's collaboration, it's resilience, it's your decision making. It's all of these skills that are so important in this day and age. And so what I'm offering is a free assessment for one of your leaders, and it will be the report, which is 20 pages of your strengths and your gaps and the roadmap for growth, and a full debrief. So we'll do it for one of your leaders so you can see the value of it, and then we can talk about how we can do it for your whole team. So again, the key insights is, what are your skills today so you can measure it, and then you can get better at it.
Real quick, Amy, the assessments, this is similar to Myers-Briggs and DISC and StrengthsFinder, right?
Well, actually, that's a good point. So those are assessments that are used, and they've got their time and their place. But what's interesting is those tell you about your personality and your preferences and not your actual skills. So this is actual skills, how you perform on real world scenarios. That's what makes it so exciting. So thanks for asking.
No problem.
All right. Well, as we wrap up here, I want to thank everyone for joining. Not trying to sell you anything, but as you can tell, Joel and I are really passionate about the onboarding process and about the teaming, and we'd love to continue the conversation. So we'll share out these slides, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. And again, we'd love to help you onboard and orchestrate brilliance together. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.